For those of you who sometimes feel like your voice doesn't matter and speaking your heart falls on deaf ears, this is the episode for you. I'm live with Denise and Mackenzi, and they're going to share their story with you and how they utilize that experience to serve women who might need to be lifted up a little bit and might need to be encouraged to speak their truth. We couldn't do this without our sponsors at Black Oswald Coffee Company. Every time you hear my laptop ding, every time you hear my phone ding, I want you guys to take a sip of your coffee drink because it's real life, and I forgot to turn my notifications off. But I digress. Before I go any further, I do want Denise and Mackenzie to share who you are and what you do, and then we'll transition into your story.
Okay, awesome. So my name's Denise Stifler. I'm a life coach, and I work primarily with men and women who are healing from harmful and toxic relationships, whether that's through family or work or different relationships, whether it be sometimes marriages, things like that. I help women and men heal from those. And then I'm also a podcast co-host with Mackenzie on our podcast From Rundown to Renewed, which is launching honestly into a much bigger women's ministry, which we'll share more about throughout the episode. But we're so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Marta, for having us. And yeah.
Thanks for being here. Okay, so obviously we know the show is about how stories of, I don't even want to say hardship, because sometimes it's just stories of challenging moments and how those moments allowed you to transform into the version of yourself that was responding your higher calling. So, Denise, I'd love for you to share some of your story. And by the way, special backdrop today because we are sharing Denise's story as kind of a teaser to the chapter in the upcoming book, Course Corrected, which is also a book about stories of trials and tribulations turned into passion and purpose. So, Denise, take it away. Let's just chat. Let's just tell people about your life a little bit.
Yeah. Um, for quite a while, I was a stay-at-home mom. I have two young kids. They're not as young anymore. They're 10 and almost 8. So we've grown out of that stage of life. But when they were itty bitty, I was a stay-at-home mom. And um, about 4 years ago, I very abruptly lost my marriage, genuinely overnight. It was just hey, we're done here. And that was pretty much it. And there's more nuance to it, but that's the gist of it. And fun fact, actually,
That was on his end, right?
it was on his end.
Mhm.
Yes, very much a blindside moment for me, something I was not expecting. And that was actually, I did not realize this until a few days ago, but that was actually 4 years ago this week that had happened. And the only reason I knew that, which this is the power of healing, is a picture came up on my phone of my daughters holding a Panera bag of bagels. And that, my best friend, the morning after all of this happened, I called her and just was completely, baffled at what was happening and so confused and in so much pain and is really not even getting words out at this point, like not forming sentences well. And she lives in Ohio. I grew up in Ohio, and she door dashed breakfast over to us, and I sent her that picture of my girls holding this bag of bagels, and that was the only realization for me this week that it happened this week. Like our bodies remember things, and our bodies hold a lot of our trauma, and to be able to come across an anniversary and not even realize that it was the day is such a telling part of the power of healing. And when you really invest in yourself, through whatever it is that you may be going through, when you're going through hard times, I think one of the most important things you can do is invest in yourself and heal, because your life will be so much more fulfilling, and you'll feel so much more empowered, and you will have a voice, and you will use your voice, and you won't be afraid to use your voice. And I just thought that was really such a kind of a pivotal moment this week of Oh, cool. I mean, not cool, but cool for
Right.
me. Like that I didn't feel the weight of this. I'm a very what's
Empathetic.
I'm a very empathetic. I feel very deeply. It's just how I'm wired. And that used to be used as a weapon against me for sure. You know, you're too sensitive. It's not that big of a deal. And those words are so harmful for for an empath. They're so harmful because then you think you're the problem.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of my story was really thinking that I was the problem in a situation where I was never perfect and I will never claim to be, but I was squashed down to nothing really. And the last 4 years of my life really have been rising from the ashes of everything that got burnt down. And it's really gritty. It's hard to realize that you have become a shell of yourself, you
Yeah.
know?
I
I'm
was
a
going
very
to ask. I hear a lot that when you're in the situation, you do everything that you can to keep it together. Like you
yes,
pieces are falling apart and you're just kind of grasping for them to just keep this thing together that isn't there. You don't even have the right pieces, right? Because
right.
you're just being thrown into situation after situation after situation. And then
Yes.
when you're out of it, you're like, oh God, what a weight is being lifted. Was that what happened for you?
Yeah, it was very, I share about this in the book a little bit, but the night it happened, I couldn't sleep. And I remember walking down the stairs of my house and my whole body was shaking. And I realized, I mean, after I started to understand trauma responses and how your body takes on these situations, that was partly my body just releasing all of
Mm.
this weight that I had been carrying over the last however many years. So yeah, but you take on all of these things and you're trying to put things together to make it look a certain way, and you just there comes a point where you can't,
Mhm.
and everything just kind of crumbles. And as a mom, you know, you do to a degree have to keep it together for your children, right?
And
Because even
your
when you're
children too. What would you say about that? Because I know that that's a challenge for those kinds of situations where you're trying to like protect the image of this person for your children,
mhm,
also prepare them for what's going to be inevitably coming their way.
right,
What do you think about that?
it is, you know, I talked to my therapist about this a while ago because my
Mhm.
daughter, who's older, she just started having questions.
Mhm.
And I used to give kind of blanket statements because of the you do want to honor and protect to a degree.
You don't want to be the toxic person who's feeding negativity to your children.
Right, right. But in the same sense, what my therapist told me was there are certain things that she's seeing, or at least she thinks she's seeing, or she's feeling, or but she needs you to affirm them because if you don't, then she won't trust herself.
She'll start to think she's the
She'll
problem.
start to think
Yeah.
she's the
Right.
problem, and then the cycle continues. And so I've had to I've had to share certain things with her at age appropriate levels, um, because our kids, we're not raising kids, we're raising adults. And so you have to play that long game and you have to think about,
Mm.
okay, they need to have their own autonomy and they need to be able to trust themselves. And so you can share truth with them in a way that can honor the situation and also honor their very lived experience as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And I think it'll segue beautifully with, we're going to be sharing Mackenzie's story as well, of, I guess I'm kind of gathering that Mackenzie, you experienced something maybe similar as a child. And what I want to ask you, Denise, is do you feel like how did you even get into this relationship? Because I want to bring awareness to there are intelligent, capable,
Mhm.
sharp women
Yes.
every day who
Yes.
think, how 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 did I get myself into this? So how do you think it happens?
Well, I was young too. I was in my early 20s at
Mhm.
the start of this relationship, and I think uh, I think we're going to go back to that empathetic piece, And I think for me, I'm someone who always believes the best of people. And I grew up, I had a really, you know, decent, good childhood. And I didn't have a lot of exposure or knowledge of
These
people
people
can
are
right. Oh, or like exactly like these type of this happens. What? Like when people would tell me certain stories, I'd be like, "What? That's crazy," you know? But I didn't have knowledge of someone can look a certain way in one setting and be a totally different person in another setting. And so I think because I'm empathetic and because I love people, and a lot of times in these situations, what happens is you're told some kind of story that pulls at your heartstrings and makes you have compassion for whatever it is that they've gone through, they're going through. And and if you're an empathetic person, it's just like hook, line, sinker, you know? And then as you continue to be in the relationship, a lot of times, like for me, it was kind of an overnight switch. uh, we were already married, and it was one way this day and it was another way the next day, and that's a hard thing to wrap your mind around. And when you're
So
an
you're saying he didn't show his colors till you were married? Is that what you're saying? Because I hear that a lot too.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Mhm.
yes. And so I think what happens is when you're an empathetic person, and like I'm a person of faith, and you hear all the time, well, the first year of marriage is the hardest. And you hear all of these things, and just keep praying and this and that. And listen, I am a firm believer in prayer. I'm a firm believer in all of these things. Uh, but it's those types of advice aren't helpful in these situations because your mind is being warped, and you start to shrink because it's very subtle. For me, it was very subtle. It's not like it happens overnight. There was kind of a switch overnight, but then there's like this cycle that you get put in towards where there's kindness and there's love. It's not like they're horrible all the time, because they're not. That's why people stay.
That, that's the kicker.
That's why people stay, is because there is kindness shown. And so for me,
Oh, that, yeah.
yeah, and for me it was like, oh, this is who they are. It's like if you want to give it a calendar, it's one day they're nice, 29 days they're not nice, but you believe the one day of niceness and you
Yeah.
cling to that and you believe
You
that.
want to be accepted. You
Right,
want your whole self to be accepted. So of course you're going to accept the person's whole self, all the
exactly.
beautiful sides, right?
That's right. And that's marriage, right? I mean, you do, like, it's gritty. You have to know that not every day is going to be a bed of roses, right? But I think it is, I think a lot of women, a lot of very smart, capable, beautiful women do find themselves in these situations. And I want
But
to lovingly
from
tell
what
you,
I, from
you,
what I hear is because they're kind of targeted. Because of course, and you never said that this person is a narcissist. You never even mentioned that word, but let's say they were, because typically these types of relationships, yes, it's overdiagnosed. That term is overused, especially on social media. But typically they're drawn to the capable, the smart, the celebrated, the act, the one with uh the community. They're the woman of faith in the Bible that everybody, she lifts everybody up. That's who they're drawn to. And because she has this persona, it's that much harder because you're trying to keep all this shit together because you have this life. And
mhm,
now they're like dropping one dumpster fire on you after another. And so
mhm.
you have that much more pressure to keep it together,
Yeah,
right?
that's so true. And like I said, and that's why I really at the beginning wanted to share what I experienced this week, because it's like my life isn't full of dumpster fires anymore, and I don't even I mean, it's not without its issues with
Right.
children and just life in general, right? I mean, all of us experience things, but I the weight of all of that is, it's not it's not an
Yeah.
everyday lived experience. And that's why I urge people, like, do the gritty work. I will not tell you it's fun at all. It's taken a lot for me to get to where I am and to be who I am sitting across from you today. Um, but it's
I wanted to go back to what is something helpful to say to someone who is struggling in that moment? Because we talk about what isn't helpful, and that's gaslighting the person, telling them it's normal and there's nothing wrong, right?
mm,
So, or telling them to, well, I don't know, sometimes that's what's tough. Sometimes it is helpful to say, what's your part in this? And maybe your part in this is simply that you keep putting up with it, or maybe it's so hard because again, like you said, we're not perfect. We're not claiming to be perfect as women in these kinds of relationships, but I don't know what's helpful.
I think if you are a person of faith,
Mhm.
right? I mean, all God hears everything. He loves you. He wants to be in this with you. He will see you through it. That's been the anchor of my life. Um, if you, and then I would also say community is so important. Who are your people that you can say literally anything to and they will believe you? Because that's the other tricky piece is people believing you.
Yeah,
So
because I had somebody close to me recently who has had a similar situation, and people's responses are, but are you sure? Because he always seems so nice. And I'm like, that
yeah,
is like the least helpful thing you could
it is
say.
the least helpful thing. So I
I
get
went on vacation with them and he seemed like a gem. I'm like, I'm sure he did because he was playing the part. They're very good at that.
yes, yes. And so I think reach out to people that will believe you and confide in them because you need to talk these things through. Go to therapy. Go, please, please, please go to therapy. And there was another one, it was in my brain and now it's gone.
There's one that I heard recently that I hadn't thought about, but if you literally have no one to talk to because you're so private and you just aren't at that place yet, get in your car, go for a drive and talk to yourself. Speak it
Yep.
out. Speak it out. Obviously, prayer, talk to God, but like just speak it all out. You might find yourself screaming and losing your voice,
Hmm.
but that's what you need because
Yeah.
you literally have no one to talk to because you're so private and you want to protect that person so much. Maybe you're not there yet where Denise is, or you're in it. That's something that you could do.
And
I think
you
from
can,
another perspective too, if like someone comes to you and tells you these things,
mhm,
Yeah.
they're going to be struggling with their identity now. And
yes.
they don't want to identify as this divorced woman with this like pitiful woman, you know?
Yes.
So speaking truth and life over them, like, who are you? Because
Hmm.
the fact that Denise was divorced doesn't change her value or worth or anything. And speaking that truth over your friend.
Yeah. And that was key as well. People, I remember I was really scared to tell people. And I told one of my very best friends, she reached out to me and she knew that things were like sort of happening, but she wasn't entirely sure. It's very early on. And she said, I just told her, I said, I have done everything I possibly can think of, and it's not working. And she said, I am so sorry and I'm so proud of you and I'm here whatever you need. Like I have chills just telling you again because
That
those
was,
moments are so pivotal
yeah.
in these situations when people don't shame you and they
Mhm.
don't tell you you're crazy, but they tell you that they're sorry and they love you and they're with you because then you know you're not alone in it. And that's huge because you do somehow get isolated in these situations and to know that I have someone in my corner. I have multiple people that I can call and talk to. I mean, when you're at that point, when you're ready, it's life changing.
Yeah. Just one more thought about that before we shift to Mackenzie. And I want to mention our sponsor again. Huge thanks to Black Oswald Coffee Company because the show would not be the same without our sponsor, especially because it's not just coffee. For every drop that you drink of their coffee, for every grain, for every bean, proceeds do go towards nonprofits helping those undergoing mental health journeys. And not only can you buy the coffee on their website and the proceeds go to helping those who are experiencing a mental health difficulties in some capacity, But you can also, if you have a mental health nonprofit that is near and dear to your heart, you can partner with them. You can reach out to them and say, I'd love to raise funds for this nonprofit or this cause, and they will absolutely partner with you on that. But one thing that I want to mention that I think is important to note, and you can tell me what you think about this, is that oftentimes there is no physical abuse, there is no violence, there is no infidelity. And so people stay in these for the kids, and or because they don't recognize that this is not okay. Can you give me some thoughts about that before we switch to Mackenzie's story?
Yeah, no, that's
Both
very,
of you weigh in.
that's very true. Like you're spot on. And it's again, there's this there's this trauma, and there's this shrinking that happens, and so you're not even necessarily in a frame of mind to be bold and to be like just to
Like you
take
don't even believe that you can
you don't
survive
right,
outside of this relationship.
right,
Yeah,
absolutely,
that's key because a lot of people feel like, well, this sucks, but I can't leave. What would I do? Where would I go? How would it even work? So
yes,
what do you say to that?
yeah, I felt the exact same way. Like it was a torment getting out of it, because even though like it wasn't my decision, it was still happening, and so I had to get myself out of it. And it was, I think it's just start, Mackenzie said for like friends to speak truth over you. Start speaking that truth over yourself too. Again, if you're a person of faith, you can read the Bible and you can pray things over. You can pray scripture over yourself. I mean, I pray the Psalms and the Proverbs over myself a lot. And what's beautiful about those is the Psalms, there's so many Psalms of lament where David is just like crying out to God. Like the Bible is not this like happy, everything is beautiful story. There's so much grit
I
in it.
think I would venture to say it's kind of the opposite
The
of
exact opposite. That's right. And so the Psalms are um, they're such a balm for your soul in really hard times, because you can recognize like even giants of faith had these deep, dark moments of despair. And so it is okay and normal part of the human experience to have those times. And you will find yourself out of it. It's like you need to, I think it's important to honor where you are while looking for the light, looking for the hope. That's the title of my chapter in the book. It's Breaking the Chains, Finding the Light. And that was the huge part, was just keep, if even if you're crawling, it's okay. Like just keep going, because there is light. Even if it's pitch black right now, it cannot stay pitch black forever. And so you can find your way out and you can find the light. It's just honoring all parts of that process.
Yeah, I like that. So, Mackenzie, well, we touched a little bit about Denise and what happened in her childhood. And it sounds to me like Denise, you were like um, kind of caught like with a deer in headlights because your childhood was relatively, would you say, I don't even want to say normal because there's no such thing as normal,
There's no
but
such thing as normal.
positive.
It
It
was,
sounds positive.
it
Yes.
was, right, right.
Yeah. And so where Mackenzie comes in here, is that you feel like that wasn't necessarily the case for you. And what we've just described in terms of Denise's marriage, a lot of it maybe was happening, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, in your own childhood. And how both of you have taken these experiences is how you're helping women. And you'll share more about the upcoming conference, but also, of course, pick up Course Corrected on September 4th. You're going to hear you're going to read Denise's full story. So Mackenzie, have at it. Tell me what's up.
All right. So I'm also a life coach, and I love to work with women who are kind of stuck in these thoughts of despair and everything, and just transforming your thoughts, rewiring, because our brains are neuroplastic and they can be rewired. And I had to go through this whole process. I had a lot of beliefs in myself that were not true and were from the enemy, and that were either spoken into me, or that there was silence and my brain
Mm-hmm.
decided to put them there.
Mm-hmm.
So things like I would never measure up to anything, things like it was my fault, like so many terrible thoughts that when you develop those in childhood, they do come with you into adulthood if you don't heal and deal with them. And they go into every area of your life. So I'm really passionate about helping women rewire their brains and to stop believing the lies and to start believing truth.
I have a question about that, and I apologize if I looked distracted. I just wanted to make sure we were live because this is a really good episode. We are live. That's the good news. Question that I have about that is how do you know that these thoughts in your head are the enemy? Which we won't even call that. So obviously we know the devil is the enemy, but sometimes people misunderstand that as, these internal thoughts are the enemy. The internal thoughts are not the enemy, right? The internal thoughts sometimes are, okay, what's going on here? Why am I thinking this? So how do you decipher between this is not truth to maybe I could grow a little bit from these thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
Go into God's Bible. That would be where I would start, because that's where you're going to find truth. So if you are telling yourself that you will not amount to anything, you can read like God's life that he has planned for you is abundant. He wants you to live an abundant life, and that's biblical. So does that thought align with what God promises? And it's no. So then you can be like, okay, so something that I do when I realize that these thoughts are not from God, they're from the enemy, I sit and I say, okay, where did this come from? And I just sit in silence and like ask the Lord to reveal to me, and he'll show me like, this is where it was rooted. And then you just pray for healing over that.
Yeah, I think that's really really good advice. So, can you tell me a little bit more about what it is that you were experiencing and how it's specifically playing out into your adult life now? Because as we said earlier, you're not raising kids, you're raising adults. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so as a child, I was sexually abused. And so I felt silence from a young age. And that went into adulthood. And when I finally started using my voice, I realized how much of an impact it can have on other women that have gone through this or feel like their voices don't matter. Because everyone has a story and everyone's testimony is so important to share. And I started my health journey, and it was going to the gym, it was finding a functional medicine doctor, it was doing all these outside physical things. And the last step for me was therapy. And because I didn't want to talk about these things, I didn't want to confess that these things happened. And so I finally decided to go to therapy because it was like coming up every day for me. I couldn't push it away anymore. So I went to therapy and I planned to tell her and her alone and move on.
Like
And
you thought this is like, okay, we're let's just get this over with and
yeah,
then
I'm like, I'm going to heal. We're going to be good. Let's go. But what I learned is that my story is not very different from a lot of women. And it's when people speak up and talk that healing happens.
yeah. So what would you say we can do to help our children speak up if something like that is happening, or help the children of the world speak up? What are some questions that we can ask? What are some things that we can say as parents?
A question I always ask my kids, they're actually gone this week, both at camp. And as soon as they get home, I will be asking them different questions to see how their week went. But a question I always ask is, did anything make you feel uncomfortable?
That's smart.
And, sometimes they'll say really silly things, and sometimes they're more serious of things that they didn't, that actually made them feel uncomfortable. But also teaching them that at a young age, we've always used specific body parts. We always say them. So it's not like they touched my cookie and you're like, oh, okay, was it chocolate chip? So
Yeah.
we, we
I
always,
love this, by the way, because I am all about injecting humor even in the most serious, fucked up bullshit I'm sorry if swearing not your thing. Sometimes you have to say it, but I'm all for it. So keep going.
Yeah.
Chocolate
So
chip.
was a chocolate. Yeah. So we use specific body language, the actual terminology, and
Okay,
we
so you're
say,
saying that you do recommend that with
yes,
children.
at a
Okay.
young age,
Yes.
very
Yes.
young. Yeah, as soon as they can start. And there are great books that like teach about your body at a young age, at appropriate ages. But to know that no one needs to be looking or touching at them, like, besides like if you have a problem and your parents need to, or doctor. So
My
And your parents are present, because I know that there was also been a lot of physical abuse by health professionals because parents think, well, I can trust this health professional. I can look away. I can be distracted. I can step out of the room. And it's like, you have to watch like a hawk
yeah.
and teach. Even whenever it starts to happen with my kids, I say, I'm here. So this is okay. If it makes you uncomfortable, we can stop, because it's kind of like, you don't
yeah.
actually have to look doctor. I feel like if they had a rash or something, they would tell me.
Right, right.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
Our doctor, whenever she'll do the girls' physicals at certain points, she'll be like, "This is okay because mom's here." And
Mhm.
I mean, we've had the same doctor since the girls were babies.
My
So
head spirals into so many families that I've heard about where the mom was complicit in so many awful things.
mm,
But then you have to remember, okay, well, you're not that crazy mom. So it's
Right.
okay to tell your kids it's okay because mom's here, because the sad part is that sometimes in many children's homes, the mom's not even a safe place. And my heart hurts for that. But I digress, as I always do. So you mentioned, we talked about how do you know if this is a real thought? How do we know it's something from the devil? And I think I have somebody close to me that comes to me with things, and they'll say, "Should I do this?" And well, my first question is that what you desire to do? Well, no, I think that I could do this because then they'll realize this. And it's like, well, if you're doing anything to teach anyone a lesson, guaranteed the lesson will not be learned.
Right.
And then I'll ask, do you feel like you're doing this from a place of love? Or are you doing this because you're afraid something is going to happen? Is this from a place of fear? And most of the time, it'll be like, you're right. I'm afraid of this, and therefore I'm doing this to protect myself. So what are your thoughts on that? Anything else that you want to say about that topic?
Yeah, I think if you're if you're okay, so here's another part of my story.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
I was able to confront my abuser and talk to him. And I did that because I needed my voice to be used. I wasn't a little child anymore. I could use my voice. And so, whatever he did, I had to be okay with. Like, if he denied it, if he
Right.
rage screamed,
Yeah, such a good
however he
point.
would respond,
Yep.
that did not matter.
Right.
What mattered
Right.
going into it is that I got to say what I needed
mhm.
and to heal for myself, because everyone is on their own healing journey. Everyone's going to respond in different ways. So going into that conversation, I knew that, and I knew that was the purpose of the conversation. So if you're going into a conversation or making choices
With an
based on
expectation,
other
yeah.
people, based around other people and with those expectations, then it's not um, good.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think that is what keeps a lot of people from healing is they want that apology. They want that
Yes.
remorse. They want that realization, that come to Jesus moment for the other person of, I'm so sorry, I did you wrong. You're absolutely right. How could I have taken you for granted for so long? I'm sorry I hurt you. And that might never, ever,
Yes.
ever happen.
Right.
And you have to be okay for you, because it's only hurting you. They're going to be a hurt individual no matter what, whether you're okay with what they did or not. So you might as well be okay.
Yes.
And I hate to say let that go because it's so hard, but what would you call it?
Surrender.
Yep.
Surrender. Yeah, release it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes there's stages to surrender, and sometimes it's a one time. It depends on the person and the gravity of things, but I do think surrender is key, because you're right, odds are high in some of these situations you are not ever going to get what you want. And what kind of prison are you going to put yourself in by trying to expect something from someone that they either don't want to give or they can't give?
Yeah.
It just hurts you.
So what was your response? What was the response, Mackenzie?
It was remorse
Oh, okay.
on his end. On
And how
my,
did that feel?
I didn't I didn't want to have any expectations going into it. So, I mean, I don't think his response really mattered to me
Or
as
you
much.
just needed to say it.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
So the healing part came from my part, not his end. He could have responded however, and it
Right.
would have not affected me.
Well, that's healing right there. Well, guys, I have loved this episode. I think I have to say that hands down, it's one of my favorite ones. So I can't wait to share it on all the platforms. And if you are watching on a platform that you can subscribe and you can leave a 5-star review, or if you're listening on a platform that allows you to subscribe or leave a 5-star review, please do. It helps these stories to be elevated to more and more um, ears and hearts, and allowing others to be inspired to maybe speak their own truths from this episode. And I am your host, Marta Saray Greca. I am a financial rep and I help families account for every dollar, how to grow it, how to protect it. And this show is produced by Whole Truth Communications, LLC, a content creation firm. And again, we couldn't do it without our sponsors, Black Oswald Coffee Co. Go to blackoswaldcoffeeco.com, use the code with all caps, awesome15, help them out. That way they'll just keep being our sponsor and keep the show going, and we can keep telling stories like this. How about that, guys? Help us out, help us help you. And until next time, bye.